be my tap in of the week. So let's just get right into that. I think that's a pretty good segue there, Brian. So we switched up some of our terminology. We were going with sitter, half volley, long shot. Sitter was kind of confusing some people. So we switched it to tap in. So to refresh your guys' memory, tap in is going to be a player that we think is guaranteed going to score points. That's going to be a guy that you should consider captaining, that sort of thing. There's a really high fantasy floor for that player and also a very high ceiling. Our 50-50 is going to be a guy that's probably, in the 8 to 6 mil range, a guy that has a really high boom, really low bust. So there's a lot of risk involved in that one. And our long shot is a guy that's going to be cheaper, a guy that might start, might not, a guy that not a lot of people are going to roster, somebody like that. And if he hits, you're going to look like a freaking fantasy genius and you're going to thank us like the Jackson Reagan from last week. So my tap into the week, the guy that I think is going to score goals, a guy that you would consider captaining. He's going to run the top of my line up there. Cucho Hernandez at 8.7. Like you said, he had the $0.3 million decrease in value. They're going to be playing at home versus DC United. He had a brace in his first time out versus DC last year in just 36 minutes as a second half sub. And the Crew have scored at least 2 goals in their last 5 matches versus DC, and they've scored 3 goals 3 times in that span. That is why Cucho Hernandez is my tap in of the week.
Nice. My tap in. Are you actually thinking about captaining him this week in fantasy?
No, I will be captaining Daniel Gazdag until further notice.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, he could be a guy that if he pops off for 2 or 3 goals, like you're going to want to, he could be a guy you captain. You look like the smartest player in fantasy next week.
Man, yeah, which I mean, could definitely happen. I was like, man, that would be a strong move to captain the forward.
That's a bold take from a Crew fan. Imagine that.
Yeah. Yep. So my tap in is Carlos Gil coming in at 9.7. He had, I mean, for not scoring any goals or creating any assists, he had a pretty good game still against Charlotte FC in a stingy 1-0 win. He has a plus matchup this week. I'm doubling down. Call me insane. I'm doubling down on the Houston Dynamo for my tap in. I had to tap in Lucho Acosta last week against Houston Dynamo, calling it a plus matchup. I'm doubling down again this week with Carlos Gil at a home. I'm just going to call it a plus matchup. Houston Dynamo's earned my respect to take the plus off. It's just a plus matchup this week, but I'm still, I really, Carlos Gil is just the centerpiece of that New England Revolution team. Oddsmaker have this as the 3rd most likely game to have over 3.5 goals. Carlos Gil is just the center of that attack. Vrioni just doesn't seem to quite be it there in the attack. So all the goals seem like they might have to come from him again this year, sort of similar to what happened last year. And I like players that have to be the centerpiece of these kind of situations. And it seems like there's goals to be had in this game, even though Lucho performed poorly, or like fantasy wise, his point total was poor against Houston. He had chances, they just didn't go his way, and that happens. So Carlos Gil should have those opportunities and should, if you have the opportunities, sometimes they'll go your way, sometimes they won't, but I'm doubling down for it this week. So we'll see if I get punished again. Maybe I just will let off on Houston Dynamo for the season.
You prepared for that rebuttal because I was ready to throw the Lucho Acosta dropping points thing right back in your face, man. That's well done. Good prep there from you, Brian. Good prep.
Yeah.
All right. So my 50-50, the guy that's got a, really high ceiling, he could also be a bust this week, right? Edward Lowen, 7 mil. He is the midfielder for St. Louis City SC in their home opener versus your beloved Charlotte FC. He's coming off a 12-point performance with 2 assists versus Austin, who had that injury to their back line, and brought in Kip Keller, who had a disaster of a game. But anyways, 12 points in a team's inaugural game. That blew my socks off. That's a great performance, 2 assists. And he's going into a very highly anticipated and emotional match that could go one of 2 ways. It's going to be St. Louis City SC's home opener, brand new stadium, going to be a sellout crowd. So that could go one of 2 ways for him. And he's a big bonus point guy as well. He collected a lot of bonus points against Austin last week. 1 big chance created, that got him a point. 7 ball recoveries, that got him a point. 3 key passes, that got him a point. And 4 shots, that also got him a point. So he was a big bonus point monster last week. And then he's top 3 amongst MLS fantasy midfielders in points per million, 1.7 points per mil. So you're getting your value there. So he's my 50-50 of the week, Edward Lowen.
That's a great pick. Honestly, I rewatched that game before going on MLS Corner, and he was the one out of that game, Austin versus St. Louis, that really stood out to me. Is like I think he's a real baller for sure, and he's taking all their set pieces. So I mean, you can't go wrong there.
Set
So my
pieces,
50,
7 mil. Yeah, I
yeah,
think he's a guy that if you're looking to save some dollars in that midfield, if you've gone premium, and you need a guy around
yeah.
7, he might be your guy.
Yeah. I will say I think I'm going to back up Charlotte a little bit and just say Malanda and Tuiloma, I think a little bit higher than Austin FC's back line, but that's why it's a 50-50.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And then so my 50-50 of the week is Pedro Galese from Orlando City. And in some ways, I would say, I mean, you can almost not call him a 50-50 because of how talented he is as a goalkeeper. But the thing is, they're going up against Cincinnati this week. I mean, it's in Orlando, but Cincinnati, I mean, picking a goalkeeper who's that elite, it can be a tough decision to make against a team like Cincinnati with the amount of attacking options they have. But this game actually surprised me a little bit, but the odds makers have this as the third likeliest to be under 2.5 goals this week. So could be a little bit of a sneaky pick. I'd imagine a lot of people are going to probably avoid Pedro Galese, but I like saves. As long as those saves are made, he's an elite goalkeeper who can make those saves. He's probably going to be facing some shots, and as long as those shots don't turn into goals, you could still have a pretty big day. So that's my 50-50. I mean, I think on most other days he's probably going to be a hit. This week is a little bit more iffy, but I mean, if he hits, he could really hit because I think Cincinnati is going to get some shots. It's just that defense, that defense can hold it home in Orlando.
I agree. I think that's a good pick, but we'll come to Pedro Galese here in a little bit. I got something for you there. But my long shot of the week is going to be Noel Buck, the 17-year-old central midfielder for the New England Revolution. Crazy discount here. 4.3 mil player, almost like a guy that never plays. And he obviously got a 0.3 bump from his last week's performance against Charlotte, but still crazy discount. Buy him low now and watch that stock grow throughout the year. They play Houston at home at Gillette Stadium. So I don't have much more explanation than that, other than that it's a crazy discount. And unless Latif Blessing comes back, I think that's Noel Buck's position to lose for the Revs. He looked really good and at home for a 17-year-old against Charlotte FC on opening weekend.
He won them the game. I mean, he intercepted the ball and the aimless Swiderski pass that led to the goal. So he also stopped Bronico on a 1-2 with Capetti. And he was right there reading it the whole time, which was just unbelievable that a 17-year-old kid against a couple of veteran professional players just really read the whole play and stopped it. He looks like a fantastic young player. I really hated to see a 17-year-old kid really beat up Charlotte's midfield in their home match. That was a little bit disappointing, but yeah, he looks like an incredible young player.
One more point about Buck. So the second goal scored against Houston last week was Wobodo, the center defensive midfielder for FC Cincinnati. Noel Buck plays a little bit higher up the pitch. He's more of an 8 than he is a 6, but he's going to be making those late arriving runs similar to what Wobodo did. So that's another reason to pick maybe Noel Buck this week. Keep an eye on that lineup. He could be a switcheroo guy because he's so cheap. A lot of things you could do with him there.
Definitely. So my long shot, like we're kind of talking about a decent amount now tonight. Austin FC's back line looks real shaky these days. So I'm targeting them a little bit. Even I hadn't been really targeting Montreal as an option before this week, but they're going into Austin. With that back line, I'm going with Sunasari Ibrahim. He seems like a flyer pick at $5.5 million. He started this last week from Montreal against Miami. He had a couple big chances. They just didn't go his way, but he seemed very active in the front line. And at times, Montreal definitely they had like 6 big chances. They couldn't put any of them away against Miami. So the 2-0 score line maybe was a bit unfair for them. And I like good value out of a starting striker, especially. I feel like that's a position where if you can find a value pick, it's a great option to take it because I think a lot of the high premium strikers last week disappointed for a lot of people, especially we're talking about Vasquez, and a lot of other players like that really didn't show out. And so if you can find value and save money there and then invest more in your midfield, definitely worth doing that after how we saw week 1 go.
Yeah, after Talish Magno didn't hit for me in game one on opening
Yep.
weekend, I ended up, restructuring my lineup, and Ibrahim was
Yep.
actually the guy that I made space for up top because he was starting and he was
Yep.
about all I could afford for a starting striker. So that's why I went with. He only got me, I think, 3 points. It was
Yeah.
underwhelming as well, but it was all I could work with. And he is a starting striker at this point, so he could be a guy that you target, especially in this matchup against Austin.